You do not walk into this place. You are erased by it, behind walls higher than most buildings, surrounded by steel, electricity, soldiers, and silence. Exists a prison so absolute that once you enter, the world forgets you ever existed. No court appeals, no second chances, no sunlight waiting at the end. This isn't a prison meant for rehabilitation. It's a place designed to crush fear by becoming fear itself. And what you are about to hear is not a story meant to entertain you. It is a descent into the darkest answer a society can give when chaos threatens to swallow it whole. Because this place exists for one reason: to make sure those who once ruled through terror never breathe freedom again. Welcome to the largest and most secure prison ever built. Welcome to CECOT. Before you decide what you feel about this place, stay with me until the end. What happens here raises a tough question. Is this really justice, or just the price we pay for peace? El Salvador is a small country, smaller than many cities. Most people reading this have visited. For decades, it was a nation held hostage by fear. Entire neighborhoods controlled not by law, but by gangs whose power came from brutality. Extortion was routine. Murder was common. Children learned which streets not to walk before they learned multiplication. For years, governments negotiated, they compromised. They looked away. And the violence grew. Then, everything changed. In March of 2022, the government launched a crackdown unlike anything the modern world had seen. 70,000 people arrested in just over a year. Nearly 2% of the adult population taken off the streets. Buses rolled through cities at night. Men were pulled from homes, alleyways, abandoned buildings. Some were guilty, some were not, and all of them were sent here. CECOT was built not just to hold criminals, but to send a message. This is where the worst go. This is where gangs die. From the outside, the prison looks like a fortress carved into the land itself. High concrete walls, electric fencing humming with lethal voltage, watchtowers spaced so precisely that no movement escapes unseen. Every step toward the entrance strips you of normal life. Phones gone, personal items surrendered, even identity reduced to fingerprints and photographs. Inside these walls, names lose meaning. You are not a person here. You are a number that will never be called free again. As we pass through checkpoint after checkpoint, one thing becomes clear. This place is designed to erase hope. Signal jammers block all communication. No mensajes in, no messages out. Families will never visit. No phone calls. No letters. Some families do not even know if their loved one is alive. And for the guilty, that is, the punishment, but for the innocent, it becomes something else entirely. We are led deeper inside, where even guards hide their faces behind masks, not to intimidate the inmates, but to protect themselves. Because gangs do not forget, and outside these walls, they still exist. Every corridor feels intentional, every door heavier than the last. This is not a place where escapes are planned. It is a place where escapes are no longer imagined. The walls do not just trap bodies, they trap the idea of tomorrow. And as we approach the modules, where thousands of inmates are held together in controlled confinement, the air changes. The noise rises, the silence disappears. You feel it before you see it. Hundreds of eyes tracking every movement. Not wheat rag, not with defiance, but with emptiness. These men once ruled streets. Now they cannot step without permission. They wear identical clothes, sleep stacked like inventory, eat the same food every day with their hands. There is no privacy here, no dignity preserved, just survival. And as you stand there, surrounded by people responsible for unimaginable violence, a disturbing realization settles in. Fear has been defeated here, but so has mercy. And that is where this story truly begins. Because deeper inside this prison is a man known as CECOT, a gang leader with decades of blood behind his name, a man who claims faith now guides him, a man who will never leave this place alive. And when he speaks, The question you cannot escape is simple. Does taking everything from monsters make the world safer, or does it turn justice into something unrecognizable? If this message is already pulling you in, stay with me, because what comes next will challenge everything you think you know about crime, punishment, and redemption. As the steel doors slide open, you realize something unsettling. This is not chaos. This is order taken to its absolute extreme. Each module inside CECOT is designed like a sealed ecosystem. 8 massive structures, isolated from the outside world and from each other, yet connected by an invisible system of control. Every move is tracked. Every sound is listened to. Every breath is watched. There are no bars here like in traditional prisons. Instead, there is exposure. Cells stacked with metal bunks rising 4 levels high. Dozens of men crammed into spaces that strip away their dignity. About 80 inmates per cell on average, sometimes more. No windows. No fresh air. No place to be alone with your thoughts. The lights never turn off. Day and night lose meaning. Sleep becomes an act of exhaustion, not rest. Many inmates cover their eyes with towels, desperate to escape the artificial glare that reminds them they are never unseen. From above, guards patrol elevated walkways, rifles in hand, scanning bodies like inventory in a warehouse. This is not meant to feel temporary. This is forever. These men will never walk outside again, never feel rain on their skin, never see the sun rise or set, and perhaps most haunting of all, they will never touch another human being with affection. No family visits, no embraces, no final goodbyes. Once inside CECOT, emotional bonds are severed completely. For some inmates, that is justice. For others, it is a punishment they do not understand. During the massive crackdown, arrests happened fast. Too fast. Too fast. Police swept through neighborhoods, using appearance, tattoos, and associations as justification. And while many of those imprisoned were hardened criminals, others were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Inside these walls, guilt and innocence look exactly the same. White uniform, shaved head, silent eyes. There is no courtroom here to correct mistakes. Once registered, fingerprints scanned, and photographs taken, your identity becomes permanent inside the system. Families search. Mothers wait. Children grow up without answers. Some will watch this documentary and recognize a face, and that moment may be the last proof their loved one is alive. Before reaching the heart of the prison, we pass through the armory. Racks of rifles, shotguns, riot shields, weapons not displayed for intimidation, but necessity. Because despite the control, despite the surveillance, this place holds thousands of men who once thrived on violence. Improvised weapons are everywhere in prisons. Even here, shanks crafted from metal scraps, sharpened plastic, anything that can cut. Guards are fully geared up during movements, not due to past riots, but because the cost of being unprepared would be catastrophic. The prison is surrounded by gravel paths that crunch loudly underfoot. An alarm system without electronics. If someone moves, they are heard. Escape isn't just one wall. It's layers upon layers. Fence after fence. Soldier after soldier. Even if someone miraculously reached the outer perimeter, there would be nowhere to run. CECOT was built in isolation for a reason. This is not a place near cities. This is a place cut off from them. And as we approach the main housing modules, something becomes clear. These men are not fighting anymore. They are waiting. Waiting for meals, waiting for commands, waiting for time to pass. Days blur into each other. Weeks mean nothing. Years stretch endlessly forward with no variation. 3 meals a day. Rice, beans, pasta. No meat. No choice. Eat or starve. Hands on the plates returned clean. Hygiene is minimal. Showering happens where toilets are located. Buckets of water shared. Privacy does not exist. Every aspect of life here is designed to strip away control. because control was once what these men used to terrorize others, and now it belongs entirely to the state. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Taking control away does not erase memory. It does not erase regret. It does not erase ghosts. And as we prepare to enter deeper into the prison, toward the isolation cells and the interview that will reveal the mindset behind years of violence, one question begins to echo, louder than the guards' boots. Can a system this absolute create peace without destroying something essential in the process? Beyond the main housing blocks is a place even inmates dread: isolation, a corridor with sealed doors, heavy air, and a silence that feels physical. This is where order becomes psychological warfare. Isolation cells are not designed for rehabilitation. They are designed to break resistance concrete beds. No mattress, no pillow, no clock. The only sound is your own breathing. A tiny crack in the ceiling lets in a sliver of light during the day, but at night, it's pitch black. No books, no chatter, no sense of time. Food is slid through a slot. Water comes from a shared basin right next to the toilet. The same container for drinking is just inches away from waste. This isn't a mistake. This is deliberate. Even the strongest criminals eventually crack here, because humans are not built to exist without connection. And in these cells, connection is erased completely. Guards tell us some inmates begin talking to themselves within days. Others screamen som go silent. Silence is the most dangerous outcome, because silence means the mind has turned inward with nothing to anchor it. This is where they send rule breakers. Here, rules are everything. Look the wrong way, and you're done. Move too slowly. Attempt to communicate without permission. Punishment is swift and unquestioned. Mercy caused chaos. Discipline brought back order, but discipline at this scale reshapes people. As we move back toward the main modules, the contrast is striking. Thousands of men packed together, yet each is completely alone. Gang rivalries that once caused bloodshed on the streets are meaningless here. MS-13 Barrio, 8 enemies for decades. Now sharing cells side by side, not because they chose peace, but because fighting back is pointless. The prison forces them to get along, and in doing so, it removes identity. Tattoos still cover faces and bodies. Teardrops marking lives taken. Numbers declaring loyalty. Symbols worshiping violence. But those symbols, they've lost their power. Now, they just remind these men why they'll never get out. Guards keep a constant watch from above. Cameras observe every movement. Lights stay on 24 hours a day. Sleep deprivation becomes another invisible tool. When night never comes, time collapses. Inmates lose track of days, counting life by meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, repeat. Inmates get 1 hour a week outside their cells for exercise, Bible study, and a little movement, all under strict guard. For most of the week, the cell is their universe. This constant confinement creates something unsettling, a robotic stillness. Eyes stare blankly ahead. Faces show no anger, no hope, no expectations. This isn't rage. It is emptiness. And emptiness is harder to understand. As we stroll past endless rows of identical cells, the sheer scale hits hard. Thousands of lives are stuck in this moment, all waiting for a freedom that will never come. Redemption, closure, and yet, one man inside these walls still believes his voice matters. A former gang leader, Psycho. A name that screams both fear and respect. In just 10 minutes, we'll be sitting across from him, face to face. No glass. No bars. Only guards standing close enough to intervene if a single move goes wrong. This interview is not about sympathy. It is about understanding. Understanding how a child becomes a criminal, how violence becomes normal, how power replaces humanity, and whether a man who destroyed countless lives can still recognize what he has lost. 12 guards surround the room before he enters. Every movement is calculated, every second controlled. This isn't a chat, it's a setup with someone the system sees as lost. They remove his mask. He seems younger than you'd think, calm and alert. Unnervingly composed. Teases CECOT. His real name is spoken for the record, but it barely matters anymore. Inside these walls, names don't matter. What counts is the history over 30 years of crime, a quarter century as a high-ranking member of a violent organization. He sits down just 10 minutes. That is all he is allowed. His story starts off surprisingly normal. A single mom, no father figure. Poverty taught him everything. The streets were his school, and crime was his way to survive. The gang became family. He describes stealing not as rebellion, but as necessity. Shoes, food, clothes. Power rushes in faster than love ever could. As his influence grew, violence became routine. Not emotional, not personal. Lives are traded like currency for power, respect, and control. When asked how many lives he ended, he hesitates. Not because he is ashamed, but because the number stopped meaning anything more than 50. He says it without drama, without pride, without regret. Just fact. This is what happens when violence becomes normalized, when killing becomes a task, when humanity is replaced by hierarchy. Then something changes. When the conversation shifts to family, his voice falters. His son? The last time he saw him, the boy was 5. Now, grown, a stranger. A life he will never be part of again. For the first time, his eyes break focus. He speaks of regret, not for the victims, but for what he lost. This is not redemption. It is realization. A realization that came too late. He warns young people not to follow his path, to choose school, to listen to parents, to avoid the streets. But his warning echoes hollowly inside a prison designed to erase voices. When the interview ends, guards immediately step forward. Masks go back on. Chains are secured. The man who once commanded fear returns to silence. As we exit the module, the weight of what we witnessed lingers. This prison did not just lock bodies, it froze time. Outside, sunlight feels unnatural. Freedom feels fragile. El Salvador once had one of the highest violent death rates in the world. Entire neighborhoods controlled by fear. Extortion. Disappearances. Murder. Previous attempts at negotiation failed. Violence adapted. Expanded. So the state responded with force. Mass arrests. No exceptions. No negotiation. The result was immediate. Crime rates collapsed. Streets became quieter. Families reclaimed spaces once ruled by gangs. But the cost remains controversial. Some innocent people were swept into the system. Families left without answers, no visits, no contact, no certainty. Justice restored order, but at the price of absolute severity. Is peace built on permanent punishment sustainable, or is it a pause in a cycle that will resurface? As the gates close behind us, the prison remains unmoved, a monument to control, a warning to criminals, a question to the world. As the final steel door closes behind us, silence takes over. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, but the kind that weighs on your chest. CECOT stands unmoved behind its walls. 40,000 men. No exits. No second chances. For the people inside, time no longer moves forward. It simply repeats. Lights never turn off. Days blur together. Hope slowly erodes. This prison was not built to rehabilitate. It was built to end something. An era. For decades, gangs ruled El Salvador through fear. Entire communities lived under extortion. Children learned to recognize gunshots before school bells. When the crackdown began, the world watched in disbelief. 70,000 arrests. 2% of the adult population detained. Critics called it extreme. Supporters called it necessary. And the numbers spoke loudly. homicide rates collapsed. Neighborhoods reopened. Families walked streets that were once death zones. For the first time in generations, fear loosened its grip. But justice is never simple. Among the guilty, some innocent lives were caught in the net. Men who disappeared overnight. Families left with no explanation, no visits. No trials in the traditional sense. Their loved ones do not know if they are alive or dead. This is the shadow side of absolute control. Inside CECOT, men like Psycho reflect too late. They speak of God, of forgiveness, of regret. But regret does not resurrect the dead. The victims will never hear apologies. Their families will never receive closure. Justice here is final. The state has chosen order over mercy, control over compassion. And perhaps that choice saved millions, but it also raises an unsettling question. If safety requires stripping away humanity, what does that make the society that demands it? This prison is not just a building. It is a message to criminals. It says there is no escape. To citizens, it promises protection. To the world, it asks a question with no easy answer. Can peace built on fear last? Or does fear always find a way to return? As we step back into sunlight, freedom feels fragile, because history shows us something unsettling. Every system that believes it has solved violence forever eventually faces a test, and when that test comes, the cost is always human. If this story made you think, if it unsettled you, if it forced you to question justice, power, and punishment, subscribe. Not for me, but for you, because the stories that challenge us are the ones we need most. And this one is far from over.